Ladies and gentlemen, it is time! Welcome to today's webinar on the Automation Playbook. It's brought to you by CCW Digital and Voximplant, and it's going to be the most informative, action-packed discussion you'll see this month, if not this year. Now, call it validation, but also call it a premonition, right? Because those who are trumpeting omnichannel, talking about migrating to the cloud, and emphasizing business continuity planning, they were right. Over the past year, due to the changes we've seen and the events we've seen, we've learned just how essential those capabilities are to the contact center. We know that companies are relying on digital channels more than they ever have to manage their volume. And we know that they've had to bring their contact centers home because of required social distancing. And this has all happened. These changes have all been taking place as we've seen our resources shrink and our volume increase. Now, that's a lot of challenges that we threw at the contact center community's plate, but I'll be honest, there hasn't been a total failure. We have seen customers become more comfortable than ever using digital channels. And work from home has worked well enough that 75% of companies say they will make it permanent moving forward. So clearly there is some success. But let's not also pat ourselves on the back too much. There definitely have been some growing pains when it comes to ramping up and getting adapted. And it has absolutely affected smaller companies who've had limited resources and limited experience doing that. And this is just, when I'm saying that we haven't truly succeeded, I'm just talking about catching up. This isn't even talking about the idea of getting ahead and moving forward and adapting to the fact that in the future, customer demands are going to rise and standards and expectations will rise as well. So if we weren't able to catch up with what happened, imagine how difficult it will be to get ahead as the landscape further evolves and further changes. And that's why I started off by saying there was also a premonition. Because we recognize that by not preparing ourselves for the what if, many of us are left asking, what do I do now? How can we get where we need to go? And that is the focus of today's webinar, as we're going to be sharing an automation playbook for creating a more agile and future-proof contact center in a world where we know we're going to have limited resources, we know we're going to be working from home, and we know we're going to be dealing with a lot of change. Now, as a reminder, today's session will be recorded, and you can ask any questions at any time using the text console on your screen. Now, we're aware that we have a lot to share, so we may run out of time. And given that, we have team members standing by to answer your questions via text to make sure you get the specific assistance you need. Without further ado, let's meet our speaker, Alexei from Voximplant. I'm going to give him a chance right now to share a little bit about himself, about his company, to really calibrate today's discussion. So, Alexei, how's it going? I think you're on mute, Alexei.
Sorry. Hi, Brian. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, happy to join this webinar today. And about myself, I'm CEO and co-founder of Voximplant. You may hear about Voximplant as one of the CPaaS players. We offer programmable voice, video, and messaging APIs for businesses and developers which would like to create different types of communication experiences for their customers and users. And in addition to that platform we offer to developers, we also have another product called WaxPlant Kit, which is actually an omni-channel cloud contact center solution for medium-sized businesses, which has a lot of automation capabilities.
Great. Well, thrilled to have you here. And as in terms of an agenda for today, what we're going to be doing is first looking at some of the key challenges. I talked about how we haven't truly succeeded, but I just don't want to throw empty stones. I want to give you some examples of where we've maybe hit some walls and some struggles. And then once we identify those challenges, we can start to arm you with that playbook for succeeding. And we've broken out a framework that will allow you to identify everything from knowing where you need to take action, to taking that action, to making sure that you're consistently adding value and evolving as you need to. We'll then close by looking at a real-world solution for rising above these challenges, putting that playbook into place, and really achieving the success that we're looking for. So first and foremost, let's dive deeper into what's causing some of the challenges and the limitations in the market. Now, one of the biggest ones, one that we've always known was an issue in the contact center, but we've certainly felt this year, has been limited or constraining resources and systems. Now, going into 2020, so even before we had the pandemic, even before we had everything going on, companies in our research identified legacy systems as their biggest challenge. They were not able to upgrade their functionality, even during times of stagnation where, frankly, these upgrades weren't even as essential. So obviously, if they couldn't do that when there wasn't all that much going on, think how tricky it is when the world did change and when it will change moving forward. Now, we also had a challenge with people. Now, I'm not just talking about headcount. Granted, there are a lot of companies who were understaffed, who were struggling to get the right people in the seat. But even beyond that, what I'm talking about is the constraints we were putting on the agents we did have in place. In a past CCW study, we learned that only 32% of companies say that their agents are spending most of their days on productive tasks. 32%. That means that more than 2/3 of companies are struggling to use their agents correctly. They're not allowing them to focus on productive tasks. And often that's because they weren't making the best use of automation. They weren't making the best use of technology. And so instead of empowering agents to be more productive and more focused on the customer experience, they were bogging them down in stuff that, frankly, technology is supposed to be handling that it doesn't make sense for agents to be doing. Now, to just echo some more stats on that, we also have data issues that are making things even worse. So more than 80% of companies say that agents have to look at multiple screens when solving typical customer issues. I'm not even talking about those super complex 1 in a million cases. I'm talking about regular customers with regular problems. Agents were still struggling to solve those without having to jump between system and system. And when that happens, they're not being productive, they're not being as accurate as possible, and they're getting a little frustrated too. And that frustration, of course, trickles down to the customer. Now, just to make matters worse, 17% of companies said that agents had no context whatsoever when they were actually interacting with, when they were picking up a customer who escalated from another channel. So that means that many agents simply did not know anything about the customer. And the majority of companies say that their agents didn't know enough to truly be helpful. What that meant was they would have to ask repetitive questions. They would have to pour through CRM systems and knowledge bases and just ultimately not get what they wanted for the customer. Now, to sum all that, and that's not a great thing because only 6% of companies said it was easy for agents to find what they need, which means that 94% of companies admit that their tools, their data, their knowledge bases are not helpful for the agent. The agent, again, is jumping all over the place, not getting what they need, and that's going to result in a less than stellar experience. Now, as bad as these challenges always were, they were bad in the traditional contact center. They're even worse in the world of work from home, because now we have to support agents working from everywhere when they can't ask their agent for their supervisor for help. They can't ask their desk mate how you solve a particular problem. They're totally reliant on this data, and the data is not helpful. And making matters worse, the tools aren't even that helpful either. We've seen a lot of tools that require high bandwidth connections that aren't accessible from a lot of devices. And when agents are limited in terms of their equipment at home, you can't have that challenge. You can't have them struggling to get access to your systems, especially when 66% of companies say poor connections are a major issue from work from home. So you add all that up, agents are not being able to focus on productive tasks. Their systems are difficult to use. Their systems are difficult to access. They have poor connections, and they don't have access to valuable data about customers across channels. And it's really easy to see while we're running into some problems. And you add all that up, and it also trickles down to the customer, because when agents can't be productive, their support is going to be slower, it's going to be less personal, and it's going to be less accurate. And if tools and data don't support a connected experience, then we're not even going to allow for an omni-channel experience at a time when we know customers are using more channels and looking to connect seamlessly across the entire journey. So I threw a lot of challenges out there, and to be perfectly honest, I could go on and on, but I want to give Alexi a chance right now to share some of the challenges that he's been seeing, particularly as it relates to some smaller and growing organizations that are probably going to be facing all these challenges, but also have a resource crunch on top of it.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. It was a great overview, actually. A lot of useful stats and data. Appreciate this. And, when it comes to our customers, and not only our customers, it's probably about the whole industry. What we heard recently about people working from home, it's like, we got the whole illustration about that. When you're working from home, this environment is really hard to set up, like, a workspace where there are no external things which kind of don't really help you, like your neighbors, like your children, your home animals, I don't know, whatever. So your pets, which are, can do whatever they want when you're trying to work. So I think a lot of people face these issues. Of course, there are some workarounds. You're trying to find a room, you're trying to close the door, you have some signs like "Do not disturb, I'm working." But as you mentioned, so it probably won't help you with network connection. In addition to that, you can try to use good hardware and good equipment to avoid some of these issues, like good microphone, good noise cancellation, echo cancellation can increase the quality of customer service and make it easier for an agent to work. But still, I mean, it's really hard to get rid of all of these aspects we mentioned. And apparently, it's also about devices. Sometimes people don't have that big screens at home, which helps them to, go through all the systems they need to work with. So they have like a laptop, I don't know, 13-inch, 15-inch, and they need much more space to get information as fast as possible. So yeah, I can also go on and on with these items here, but yeah, that's what we see and what we heard. And myself, when I call to some company, sometimes you can hear in IVR saying like, it's a COVID times, so we will be using some agents at home right now. So if the quality is not that good, please understand this. So I think you also heard something like that when you call companies nowadays. Yeah, so they're just trying to help, but I mean, there are still a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and I think that point is the transparency our research shows was helpful this year. So if you were honest, hey, our agents are working from home, we have a lot of volume, you may need to use a text-based channel, customers were generally understanding this year. But as we move forward and once we're allowed to fully go back into the office in all regions, customers are not going to be as forgiving. They're not just going to say, I can't really hear the agent, but he's working from home, so oh well. They're now at a point where they can expect better experiences and they can expect strong quality. And if we can't deliver it, if we can't be fast, if we can't manage volume, and if we can't interact with them across the entire journey, that's going to start to work more and more against us. And so, again, just because you got away with some transparency this year, don't think that's going to work forever. It's really important to identify if work from home is your model, you have to make sure your agents are in position to succeed. If going back into the office is your model, you still have to make sure you're in position to succeed. And so a lot of these challenges really need to be addressed. But again, this webinar is called the Automation Playbook, right? It's not us. It's not called the Brian and Alexi complain about where everyone's going wrong discussion. So the rest of our discussion, we really want to jump into what some of those ways to take action are. And so our automation playbook relies on what I call the 4 R's. That's recognize, respond, report, and revamp. Now, each of these steps is going to use a combination of modern technology, including automation, as well as smart strategy to make our contact centers more seamless, more scalable, and ultimately more conducive to a world that involves at-home work and digital customer communication, as well as a heavier reliance on self-service at a time when you don't have a lot of resources, you need to ramp up and understand new customer issues. You want to make sure that's as effective as possible. And so let's start with the recognize component of the 4 R's. Now, Alexi, we've kind of talked a little bit about how the landscape has changed, and I don't necessarily know that you need to remind our audience that we're in a pandemic and things are different. And, I think they probably understand that. But what I do think is important is to identify how the right technology and the right strategy can help us better recognize where some of our gaps are and what actions we need to take. Because if you don't know that, if you don't know what you're trying to solve, then you can't build a successful plan. So what's your take on the way automation, technology, innovative thinking can help us better recognize some issues out there?
Yeah, so I got the special slide for that as well. So I think that, there are 2 parts of the whole thing. So first of all, it's about contact center itself. And as a second part is related to agent workspace. So when we are talking about contact center infrastructure, it means that, automation is here to help, and we need to use as much of automation as possible today. Because, I mean, smart automation, of course, because dumb automation makes customers unhappy, but when it comes to smart automation, we should use it as much as possible, because in the end of the day, customers want to be served really fast. And when you got a smaller number of agents, which is true today, because you can't always have that many agents you had in pre-COVID times, you want to automate as many requests as possible and make your customers happy. In that case, automation can be applicable for both messaging channels, voice channels, and today, thanks to all these new technologies like speech recognition, real-time speech recognition, natural language processing, we can really do that. It requires some effort from companies and businesses, because still it requires some investment, time, and technology to implement automation, but it's a must-have today. I mean, even for smaller companies. When it comes to contact center infrastructure, it's also about distributed agents working from home. Apparently, not every contact center was ready. I mean, there were a lot of contact centers which already use this model, but right now it's something they must offer to their agents. And there are a lot of challenges and issues we already mentioned, like network connection, like some informational systems required for agent to work. So it's all about making distributed agent workspace as efficient as possible and enable access for distributed agents to the infrastructure they previously had in office. And also it's all about adding more channels than we had previously, because in many cases, we had the chance to go to an office before coronavirus. Right now, it's not an option. So what you need to replace that with new options, because number of requests is much bigger than what you mentioned previously. So you need to have more messaging channels. I don't know, maybe even video channel can be added in some specific cases, because people still want to talk face-to-face, and video communication is one of the options. When it comes to agent workspace, we already mentioned many of things. I would probably say that there are interesting technologies which can be applicable, like AI-powered echo cancellation, which is becoming popular today. There are startups like Crisp, there are technologies like NVIDIA's RTX. There are other companies introducing audio enhancements powered by AI. But in the end of the day, it's all about making agent experience as close as possible to what they had previously at the office.
Yeah, and I think you laid out an important framework there, because, obviously just, have to recognize that there are going to be limitations, even if you understand what's going on in the market. So, one of the biggest challenges we've often talked about is often we don't have good enough data to even know what customers are going through, to know what we have to adapt to. But even if you do have that knowledge, you have to also identify what you can solve immediately and what you're going to need to adjust to be able to solve. And I think by recognizing, you can't just say, and companies found out, they couldn't just say, oh, we can't go into the office, let's work from home. Because yes, obviously by now, most people have the internet at home. They have ways to call and answer calls, but they do run into connection issues. They do run into some of those noise distractions. And if you don't anticipate that and start to solve for it, you're never going to be able to properly serve customers, properly achieve your productivity goals. Now, moving into the next R, which is respond. Now, obviously, we don't just want to identify, here's all the challenges we're facing, here's everything that we need to do. We want to actually be able to take that action. But there's one additional step or complication, if you will, about the ability to respond. And that is, we have to make these changes on the fly, because A, customers don't stop calling us and stop needing support just because we're learning to work from home. They're going to keep expecting great service, great experiences. And so we need to be able to keep them happy, keep them satisfied while we're making all these changes. And then B, we know that these changes are going to continue to evolve moving forward. And so we need to make sure that our response is going to change based on how the market continues to change. And that means that we're going to have the right contact center platform to be able to do that. So I'm curious, Alexei, your take on what that platform entails. From my perspective, I would assume we want to take into account things like how quickly you can switch to it, how well it integrates with existing systems and channels. But I'm curious, you're the expert here. What's your take on the right platform that allows you to respond to customer needs on the fly?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there are a number of platforms on the market today. Some of them provide with some specific, let's say, service quality monitoring, which we need to do continuously now. So, I mean, we had to do that previously, but right now it's even more important because circumstances changes all the time, and network connections, all that stuff. Because sitting at home is a completely different story. Another thing which is about platforms is what kind of tools they have for supervisors and contact center administrators. Because previously you already mentioned this in your intro, people have been sitting in the same room, so supervisor could just go to a person and say like, "Hey man, you are doing something wrong." It was much easier, right? So right now they are distributed, and supervisors should see what's going on in real time, and they should have an option to actually notify their operators and agents about some issues in the quality of service in real time. So it can be about sending things like something like push notifications, whatever, like connecting to their calls and conversations and that kind of stuff. But it's a little bit different environment today, so the tools should be available on the platform, because without them, supervisors won't be able to intervene and help their agents. And we all know that it's also much harder to hire agents today, so it's another issue here. Then when it comes to IVRs, so previously we had some IVRs, sometimes more sophisticated, sometimes less sophisticated. Today, things like voice bots and chat bots are super important, because they're taking all that, I don't know, say 60, 70, 80% of requests for themselves, and they start serving a customer as a front line. And apparently at some moment they can pass this conversation to a live agent, but they should be smart enough. They should try to solve a problem of a customer without involving live person, if it's possible, apparently. So IVRs are becoming more sophisticated. AI is being used much more than previously, and it's going to continue. Apparently, it won't happen overnight. It requires time. You need data. You need to train it. But this investment will be here for a long time. So you are working today to keep your customer service at a specific level in the next year, and maybe even a few years. So that should be done. Another question is about reports, analytics. Previously, the supervisors and administrators were using wall boards, dashboards, a lot of different things they could just put on a wall and track what's going on. Today they don't have this, so they still sitting at home with their laptop, and they need to check all these virtual online dashboards like they did with their wall boards in office. So it's another shift here, but they should be able to get all this information in the same way as fast as possible, to react as fast as possible, because we need to switch agents between queues. You need to do something when things going wrong. And about monitoring, so service is a standard thing. They've been there for a while, but today we probably need even more service, maybe more automated service after every call, I don't know, after every conversation, just to keep tracking things, that nothing is moving into the wrong direction at the moment. It's all in addition to, of course, network and quality monitoring, which is happening in real time, to avoid packet loss, to avoid voice interruptions, to avoid issues with messaging channels and so on. But in general, the requirements today are different, and platforms which can actually offer all tools and capabilities for these new requirements are going to thrive, I believe.
Yeah, and I want to dive into a specific thing that you brought up, which is our third R, and that's report. So, I think one of the big things, as I mentioned, is that this is not the kind of thing where you're going to just buy a new platform, make a few changes, and then just hands off and just expect everything to work perfectly. You're going to want to make sure that your technology is actually doing its job. Because as I mentioned earlier, when the majority of companies say that their agents are not able to spend most of their time on productive work, that means that the technology that they bought so far hasn't been getting the job done, and it hasn't been making the impact they wanted to. And so if they're going to invest in a new solution or upgrade their capabilities, they're going to need to make sure that the technology is working and delivering results. And so that's really where reporting is going to come into play. Not just about, hey, this agent's doing better than that agent, but also this system is either easy to use or hard to use, and these are the adjustments we need to make sure our agents can continue to succeed. So I want to ask you about, when you look at a modern contact center platform, what the right reporting capabilities are, how automation plays into that, and why it's so essential right now that we have this type of reporting, this type of analytics now that agents are working from home and customers are also engaging via digital and self-service, and therefore we can't always hear their complaints. We can't always tell from their tone that they're really angry or really frustrated. So we're going to need to identify where things are going right and wrong based on the hard data.
Yeah, that's true. So since we are talking about automation, when you're adding this automation piece in front of the live agents, so apparently you will still have all the reporting tools and reports related to queues and live agents, which you previously had, and you still will analyze them and try to act accordingly. But right now you have this big piece related to automated customer service, where you want to understand what's going on in there. And apparently in the reports, you will have something like end customers went to our contact center, like some number of them went to a virtual agent and started talking with this virtual agent, and some part of them then was forwarded to a live agent. So you got more numbers today you need to check. And when it comes to virtual agent, apparently keeping in mind that it's about AI and intent recognition, you want to have analytics on top of your virtual agent, which is similar to a live agent in some form of it, like how deep they could go with the conversation with this virtual agent. So what information they could get out of it. So could they solve their problem just talking with virtual agent, like this thing about question resolutions, right? So it's the same stuff, but it's all related to automation part of the whole thing, which is, I would say, it's not there yet. So there are a lot of companies working on it right now, because everybody understands that you want to have reports related to automation, virtual agents, whatever we call them. But I haven't seen many products actually. But the good news, you can actually try to integrate existing tools with contact center solutions and platforms if they have these capabilities for integrations, like Google Analytics, let's say. You can even use Google Analytics for this purpose. It helps to build funnels. It allows you to send events, so you can create pretty good reports from tools from Google, or maybe other companies working with data visualization and data processing, just by sending all these events and information to these external web services and later analyze what's going on with it. And again, returning back to other things which are important, you want to have speed, flexibility, and you want to have intellectual services. So you don't really have time today to integrate things for a long period of time. So you want to build your contact center as fast as possible, or upgrade it as fast as possible. So it should be kind of programmable and flexible. So if you see that IVR is not capable of serving your customers, you want to change this IVR on the fly in an hour, not like wait for half of a year till some integrator will fix it for you. So that's what's happening, and you want to react as fast as possible. Next gen capabilities like AI powered automation is must, because apparently not enough agents which can serve your customers today. Customers became familiar with smart speakers and smart devices, which means they understand that systems can be pretty smart. And it's already not that easy to say, well, our IVR can handle this scenario. Sorry for that. Wait for our agent for another hour till it's free to talk with you. So people are saying like, Alexa, solve my problems. That's what they expect from IVR as well. And contact center vendors should follow this. I mean, they should try to implement IVRs and voice bots, chat bots, which are as smart speakers. That's what market wants from them, actually. And yeah, so returning back to customer experience, it's even more important to work on that today than ever. We all understand it. And probably there are some channels you can add into the mix, like video, for example, which will help you with it. Hard to say if it's going to catch up or not, but we're using video conferencing all day long today because we have these video meetings, we have webinars, we are talking with parents and relatives using video today. So people probably can become more familiar with video for customer services, customer experience than they've been previously.
Yeah, and that tees up nicely the fourth R here, which is revamp. And so you identified some features that will allow us to not only catch up and not only deal with work from home and accommodate digital and make IVR a little bit better, but also allow us to consistently add value where we see opportunities. Because again, automation on the one hand, yes, while it's useful for taking boring work off our agent's plate and it's useful for extending our capacity, it also can add value and it can do certain things better than human workers can in certain situations. And so when you think about the ideal platform, thinking about ways to perhaps make call flows more dynamic and to give agents support and assistance on the fly and to easily add features, I'd imagine that if you look toward the future of the contact center platform, there's some ideas, so there's some things that you're working on, some things that you're seeing that will allow us to not only catch up, but get better and continue making sure that our customer experience is a key differentiator at a time when we know that product quality, price may not mean as much because it's so easy to get into the market that you can't always differentiate based on those things.
Yeah, that's true. So in terms of things which can be super helpful today for contact center platforms and solutions, we believe it's about programmability, but not like, using developers, but using pretty modern no-code, low-code approach to the whole contact center solution, which is becoming popular in enterprise world. Not only enterprise world, we got a lot of startups working on different no-code visual builders for different stuff. But when it comes to contact center, IVRs, automation, you want to give that simple tool to your contact center administrator or analyst or whatever, who will implement all the stuff on the fly in a few minutes, and you will have smart system working with your customers and getting information from them and trying to help them. So I would definitely add something like no code to things which are important today for contact center solutions. Omnichannel is there for a long time, but it's becoming more complicated. You have more channels. You want to have them connected with each other and with data in your systems like CRM. So people are expecting true omnichannel experience, to be honest, but we don't really see this experience all the time or too much. So there is still a lot of work that can be done to actually start offering good omnichannel experience, which is saying something like, which is about like, I started talking in the call with, IVR, and then at some point, it just wasn't convenient for me to continue. I just hang up and I can, start chatting with the same IVR in WhatsApp. That's what omnichannel is about, right? So I just want to have roaming between channels in real time if I need, and they should try to understand that it's me and they should serve me in the right way. So that's true omnichannel, which is not there yet, but it should come soon, I believe. AI capabilities, definitely speech recognition, synthesis, natural language processing. Many vendors are working on that. I would say that contact center vendors are integrating stuff from guys who are good at this, like Google, Google Contact Center AI, for example. Some of them are trying to implement their own, but it's all about data, it's all about training. So I'm not sure that you can use it for smaller companies, but mid-sized companies and enterprises will be able to use this easily. If you want to have something like a good contact center which is evolving in time, it should be programmable, and maybe you won't even use developers to help you with it thing moving down the road. So if you have something like, serverless environment, which helps developers to expand its functionality by adding some piece of code, it probably can also make sense.
So we've discussed the 4 R's here. We've gone through the need to recognize the challenges and start to make sure that our contact center operations are agile so we can quickly start to respond. We, of course, respond is the next R, and we've looked at what tools, what systems allow us to, adapt to new changes in the market, new places that our agents are working from, new ways our customers are connecting. We talked about the importance of reporting when you don't have those in-person experiences with your supervisor if you're an agent, when you don't have those vocal conversations with your customers if they're engaging digitally or via the IVR. You're going to need hard data that really tells you how you're performing and how technology is helping. And then, of course, the revamp phase, looking at innovative ways that artificial intelligence can allow you to change how your contact center is behaving, introduce new call flows, add new features without coding, and of course, give agents what they need on the fly to be the best possible support for customers. That's going to really allow you to continually revamp your experience and continually get better. So that's a nice playbook there, and we gave some different ideas, but you want to go one step further for our audience here, and you and Voximplant have worked on a kit right now that is not just a generic, exciting contact center platform with some cool features. It's specifically tailored to what a lot of companies are going through. It's tailored to a lot of limitations that growing companies may face so that they can get up to speed and they can hit those 4 Rs right off the bat and start delivering a productive atmosphere for their employees and a productive and customer-centric experience for their customers. So I want to give you the chance right now to share some insights into the Voximplant Kit, maybe tell us a little bit about how it works, what makes it different from other platforms that are out there, and if you have any demonstrations or success stories to share, we'd love to hear those as well.
Yeah, you're right. We've been working on Voximplant Kit for a while, and it all started before coronavirus, actually, like a few years ago. So we started with call automation. So initially, it was mostly about automating inbound, outbound calls, and then you could forward this to some third-party external contact center if you want. And later this year, we actually added full-featured omni-channel contact center capabilities into the mix, including web-based agent workspace, reporting, skill-based routing, and no-code visual editor is there. As we discussed, it's a pretty important piece today, which allows companies implement and program their IVRs and automation as fast as possible without, without using integrators, developers too much. So I would say that Voximplant Kit today is pretty good solution for fast to set up contact center. You literally can build contact center in 20-30 minutes if you like, and that's important for business today because you want to act as fast as possible, and then you can adjust it on the fly without losing capabilities, flexibility. So you can connect things like dialect follow for natural language processing. We got number of vendors like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM already integrated for speech synthesis and recognition. I can continue talking about the product. It's pretty good and convenient. So it's probably easier just to watch a short video we created about it, which is just 1 minute long. Let's take a look.
So thanks for sharing that, Alexi. Great video there. Really does bring all the stuff we've been talking about to life. So as we do reach the end of the webinar, and I know we're a little bit past time, but any of the questions we haven't gotten to so far, we're definitely going to answer via email afterward. But Alexi, anything else you want to leave us with about what some of the success looks like and what we can expect with the Voximplant Kit, what we can expect as the contact center landscape continues to evolve?
I would say that we all need to try to concentrate on things which are helping businesses with perfect customer experience even in these times. So it includes many things we discussed today. We definitely going to invest into our automation even more than we did previously. And I would probably keep an eye on video. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and that's exactly key right there, because again, this is a wake-up call about being agile. It's not a wake-up call that we need to better prepare for a pandemic, because hopefully that won't be the challenge we have in the future. But even if we don't have a pandemic, there will be challenges. There will be changes in the marketplace. And to start thinking about, the reminder this year is that prepare for change. Identify things that are standing in the way of customer centricity and solve them. Adopt a new platform. Think about what processes are broken, what data is missing. Leverage automation to make your teams more productive, to give your customers more options and consistency. When you do all that, and when you have a platform that brings it all together, it doesn't matter what the change is, you're going to be ready for it. And more importantly, it doesn't matter what the bar is right now for the customer experience, you're going to jump over that bar, because if something new comes out, if there's a new feature, if there's a new way to connect, you're going to be able to embrace it. You're going to be able to use it. You're going to be able to turn it into a source of customer centricity. So for Voximplant and Alexei, thank you so much for joining us. And for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor. It's been an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you all today. Thanks so much.